In this video, part 2 of the integumentary system, we're going to be discussing the accessory structures of the integument system, the unsung heroes that aid the skin in doing its amazing job of protecting and regulating temperature in our body. So let's start with that first accessory structure that it's one of the ones that we invest most money on, that we dedicate a lot of time on, and that is the hair. So the structure of hair. Hair mainly consists of dead keratinized cells. So hair, the part of the hair that we can see, it's basically just cells filled up with keratin. The shaft of the hair, which is basically the part on top of the skin, it's an area of complete keratinization, meaning that every cell that it's on that hair shaft, it's a cell that it's dead. It is just a bag of keratin. Now, underneath the skin, we're going to find the hair root, and this is an area where keratinization is still going. The hair root, it's the area of the hair that allows hair growth. So if we find growth in this area of the hair, we're going to find cells that are pretty much alive in a way very similar to how the deep layer, the basal layer of the epidermis, it's going to work. Now, what are we going to focus on? We have a lot of structures here. We have a lot of structures, but we are going to focus on three main areas of hair. First, we're going to focus on the medulla. What is the medulla? The medulla is the central core of the hair. Large cells and at some points air spaces. So where can we find the medulla of the hair? Right here in the center of the hair. Next, we have the cortex. And the cortex, we can describe it as simply several layers of flattened cells. This is going to be around the medulla in the hair. Remember that we are looking at the hair from the very inside, moving towards the outside of the hair. And the third region that will be important for us, it's the cuticle, which is basically overlapping cells, and this serves a function of providing strength to the hair. So here we have that cuticle of that hair and the three layers that we are going to focus on. Here we have a better view of what a hair looks like whenever it is on the skin. Here we have the epidermis of the skin. This thick area would be the dermis of the skin. The white, yellow, I should say, section down here, it's the hypodermis or the subcutaneous tissue, and a hair extends pretty much very deep in the epidermis. And we have that hair bulb, which kind of like have, it's on the bottom of the hair root, and it is on this area that hair growth it's going to occur. All right, it's where the will that grow it's going to occur. Talking now about hair follicles. Hair follicles are formed from a folding of the epithelium into the dermis. So that very deep end of the hair, it's to say the least an extension of the epidermis that allows hair to grow. So that's why we say that hair is an accessory structure of the skin, because basically it is formed out of the cells of the skin. The follicle expands to form the hair bulb. So it's kind of like an indentation that we have in here. We have in there hair follicle receptors, which are nerve endings of the bulb of the hair. No wonder, if we pull a little hair, we are going to feel a little pain because there is nerves attached to the hair bulbs. There we have peripheral connective tissue sheets, which is the wall of the hair follicle, and we also have something called the hair matrix, where the cells are actually dividing to produce what we know as hair. What are we going to focus on this thing? We just want to visualize that a hair, it's a part of the skin. It is produced out of the cells that make the upper layers or the epidermis. It's just an indentation. And at the very center of everything, why do hair grow? Because it has a cell matrix. And what are we going to find in this cell matrix? Cells that are actually dividing in a very, very similar way to the stratum basale of the epidermis. So hair, even though it serves this function of protecting your skin against ultraviolet radiation. It protects your skin against pathogens that might want to go in there. This hair, it's actively growing, and it is alive, at least the part that is underneath the skin, making the hair follicles. Now let's talk about a second structure, very important for the protection of my body. We're talking about nails. Nails are they serve a purpose of protecting very vulnerable parts of my skin. In other species, not in humans, nails are accessory structures for protection against other animals. They use them as tools for defending, but at least in humans, in our evolutionary state, nails serve a purpose of protecting vulnerable parts of my skin. The nail, it's a protective part on the dorsal surface of our fingers. We can easily find this stuff. The nail bed, it's the deepest layer of the epidermis underneath the nail. We can have the nail bed, we can find it here. It's a very soft part of my epidermis, and it is protected by the nail on top. The nail matrix, very important this one, guys. Nail matrix, it's responsible for nail growth. Just like the hair follicle produces the hair, the nail matrix on the deeper side, on the more proximal side of the nail, it's responsible for producing the keratinized cells that make the nails. We have nail folds, which are overlappings on this of the skin for protection, and nail folds, we can see them here on the sides of the nail. They're basically sealing off the space underneath the nail. We have a cuticle called or eponychium. And personally, I really like this word. It's a very fancy word for saying the cuticle of our nails. It's just a projection of the proximal nail fold, and the cuticle is going to be found here. Right? The cuticle, it's just a part of the skin, and it's blocking the entrance of any pathogens, any chemicals, or anything that might want to get into our body through that fold. And why do we need that fold? Why it's so important to maintain the health of that cuticle? Well, you see how close the outside or the apical surface of my skin is to the deeper layer or my bones inside of my body. So the cuticle is very important in preventing the entrance of pathogens through this area, through that area. So it's very important to maintain the health of that eponychium or cuticle. The lunula, it's a white crescent area distance to the cuticle. Here we have the lunula right there, and we have the hyponychium, which is under the free edge of the nail. The free edge of the nail is whatever grows outside of my body, and it secures the nail from the tip of the finger. So you have two structures blocking the entrance of alien pathogens. And when I say alien, I just mean external into my body. The cuticle or the eponychium, as well as the hyponychium, hypo coming from underneath the nail, blocking all of this sensitive area of my skin. So here's a couple questions that you can practice. Again, these are not required questions for you to answer and submit. You can just use this as a guide for grasping the concept and focusing on the very important things that we need for accessory organs. So now let's talk about parts of the skin that serve a different purpose. They don't serve a purpose of protecting, of kind of like blocking things from going out. We're talking about excretion. So let's talk about glands. Let's talk about eccrine glands or merocrine glands. Eccrine glands are commonly known as sweat glands. Whenever it's hot outside, whenever you're doing exercise, whenever you're under stress, your sweat glands get activated and they release water and substances to the surface of my skin. Eccrine glands are very abundant on the palms, on the soles of our feet, and our forehead. This is the places that we sweat the most. They consist of a simple coiled tubular gland, and we can see this tubular gland right here. It's a little tube that it's all tangled up, convoluted on itself, and it has an opening to the very surface of the skin. So what is sweat? The secretion of sweat consists on salt, vitamin C, antibodies, and it's 99% of water. So basically everything that we sweat, it's composed of water. Other components, like drugs, can be excreted through the glands. Whatever it is in excess in the body, it can be in little portions excreted through the glands. So, not only the glands will secrete sweat to regulate my body temperature, but also these glands can help me excrete components that are not beneficial for my body. Let's look at another different type of gland that we have in our body, the apocrine glands. There is approximately 2,000 of these glands all scattered in the human body, but more than anywhere, they are found in the axillary and anogenital areas. The secretion of these apocrine glands, they look a little bit bigger than regular eccrine glands. The secretion of them are basically the same as those eccrine glands. The sweat is pretty much the same, but there is the addition of fatty substances and proteins. And this is going to make all the big difference in the type of sweat that these two glands will produce. Normally, sweat is odorless, but microbial activity on the surface of the skin produces that particular body odor. So sweat doesn't make you smell. It's basically microbial activity, this little bacteria eating those fatty substances and those proteins that produce that particular body smells. The glands are activated by androgens during puberty. Androgens are hormones. Hormones control chemically basically every process of the body. So sometimes when humans are at the age of puberty, they have increased secretions from here, and we can see other skin complications simply because of the increased activity of hormones, specifically androgens, at this age. So that is two different types of sweat glands in every part of my body, and sweat glands that are more than anything specific to axillary and anogenital area. So let's see other types of glands that we have, most of the time just associated with hair, and those are my sebaceous glands. Common name for these glands. I know them as oil glands. They consist of a simple branch alveolar gland that is just basically the anatomy of this gland. Oil glands are found everywhere in the body with the exception of palms and soles. We mentioned before that the ridges or the fingerprints in our palms and soles are there because of increased grip. So having oil glands in your palms and in your feet will defy the purpose of having those folds for grip. So our body is just smart that way. We don't want greasy hands and greasy feet because it will diminish our functioning. This are the largest of these glands are basically found in the face, in the neck, and in the upper chest. Basically, where at the age of puberty we find the most incidence of acne. Whenever these glands get blocked, they produce what we call pimples and blackheads and well, all this kind of like skin lesions, and they are concentrated in this area. And it's not a surprise that it is because these sebaceous glands are mostly concentrated in that area, in the face, in the neck, and in the upper chest. These glands produce a special kind of secretion. We're not talking about sweat here. The secretion of these glands, it's called a sebum. And it basically consists on liquid lipids. And when we say liquid lipids, we're talking about liquid fat. So what is the function of the sebum? Their function is to lubricate, it is to soften the skin, it is to soften the hairs, and more than anything, to protect against water loss. Remember that water and oil do not mix, so by having this layer of fatty acids, of lipids on the surface of my skin, it helps control the water flow in or outside of the body. Now that we have talked about these accessory structures of the skin, let's have an overview at all of the functions of the integumentary system. This is kind of like wrapping up our module for the integumentary system. Let's first start talking about protection. Chemical barriers, skin secretions, and melanins, they will all serve for the protection of internal structures. In the skin, you're going to find a low pH or an acidic environment on top of your skin. Why do we have this? It prevents the overgrowth of bacteria. We are going to have bacteria on the surface of our skin. But thanks to the pH on the skin, that growth is going to be limited. So we are not invaded by this bacteria. It serves as a physical barrier. The hardness of keratinized cells protects against impacts and, of course, against water loss. And very similar, it serves as a biological barrier because dendritic cells, let's remember that those were cells that have to do with immunological responses, can protect you against pathogens or invading organisms in my body. This biological barriers can help me absorb ultraviolet radiation. It will protect my DNA due to the fact that ultraviolet radiation is harmful to DNA, which can result in several skin cancers. The integument has a metabolic function, and this is because sunlight allows to transform cholesterols on the cell membranes of the cell, and it serves as a precursor of vitamin D. So, literally, sunlight stimulates the production of vitamins in my body, specifically vitamin D. Another function, regulation of body temperature. The sweat on the surface of the skin helps cool the body and prevents overheating. To this point, it is very clear that our body needs a very specific temperature for its proteins to operate, and the skin plays an important role in maintaining that temperature. We have cutaneous sensation. Manar corpuscles allow me to feel touch. Lamellar corpuscles allow me to feel pressure, so I can feel a wide variety of things through my skin. Another interesting function of this, it serves as a blood reservoir. 5% of my blood it's being stored at my skin at all times. Vessels constrict, providing extra blood for working muscles and organs. So I have like a little storage of blood. And in the case that I need this blood to transport oxygen to vital organs, my blood vessels can push that blood into the bloodstream and take it to my organs for that increased little boost of oxygen that I might need. Then finally, excretion. The skin not only protects, not only holds blood, not only regulates my skin, not only allows me to feel things, but it also helps me to eliminate things. Skin excretes small quantities of nitrogen based compounds like urea, like ammonia, like uric acid, not as much as the kidneys would do, but nonetheless, they will serve a function of excreting these things through my skin. Any type of drugs or harmful chemicals in my body can be excreted through the skin to help me get rid of them from my body. So that basically wraps up the basic anatomy and physiology of the integumentary system, the system that mainly consists of the skin, its hair, nails, and glands that allow me to do so many varied functions. Until the next one.